Welcome to the overview of the Student Government Association Budget and Finance Procedures. Let's first go over what exactly is budget and finance within Student Government Association. And it's important to note that the Budget and Finance Group is actually a committee within the Student Government Association, comprised of senators that are responsible for allocating the funds hosted by Student Government Association to our student organizations such as your own here on campus. The purpose of the Budget and Finance Committee within Student Government Association has three main areas of purpose. The first being to conduct interviews and allocate the university funds to a diverse range of student organizations across our campus, ensuring that there is equitable distribution to support various initiatives and activities across our student organizations. Their second purpose is to assist in the development and nurturing of a dynamic and inclusive university environment, fostering a thriving community that reflects a wide array of interests and perspectives. Their third purpose is to strategically manage and distribute all allocated funds with the aim of maximizing student performance, ensuring that resources are utilized efficiently to support and enhance the achievements and growth of students. Review the general timeline for the Student Government Association funding allocation process. It's important to note that these dates change every year, but they follow a generalized timeline as seen here. It's good to note that you apply for funding for the next school year each September. So for example, if we're moving into the fall of 2025 here on campus, you will be applying that September for fall funding for the fall of September 26. This process is basically done a year in advance. After you apply for your funding, you'll then sign up for interviews, usually by the end of that fall semester, followed by interviews kicking off in January with the Budget and Finance Committee. By January or mid-February, allocation weekend will occur. This is when the Budget and Finance Committee actually sits down and takes the time to review all of the interviews they've conducted and begin allocating those funds to each individual student organization. This too is when your organization can appeal the allocation that was given to you. You may think you may need more funding, or maybe you were given a bit too much and you're nervous about that you're going to be able to spend it all. That's when these appeals happen. Last but not least, interviews will be conducted again for anyone who's seeking an appeal during this timeline. And finally, to end out the year, readings by Student Senate will occur in February or March. These readings are listed out so that student organizations can come here in person at a Student Senate meeting, how much funding their student organization received. Let's now review an example timeline for the fiscal year of 2027 funding from SGA. So when we say fiscal year 2027, it's important to note that this funding is for academic year 26-27 that we're already currently in. Anytime you go through SGA funding, you're doing so a year in advance. So let's look at this example timeline now. So again, we're applying for funding for 26-27 school year. Well, that kicked off in September of 2025 is when you could start signing up for a funding meeting. You would fill out your funding contract, turn in a signed copy, and then the last day to do all of this would have been by that coming November. And if you miss any of the requirements on these forms, FYI, you're going to receive no funding. So make sure to take your time and diligently complete those forms. You would then, in the next step, make sure to sign up for your interviews, for your funding interviews. That would occur in December before headed out for winter break. You would then want to make sure that you're signing up no later than the last day of the year and before the first day of class for the coming spring semester. Otherwise, you would receive a 20% penalization for your allocation of funding. Interviews then kick off in the spring semester for, again, that next academic year. So this is really a rotating cyclical cycle. Every fall, you're applying for funding. Spring, you're interviewing for that funding that you will receive in the next academic year. The student organization funding allocation weekend is then that coming spring semester. Appeals are done after that allocation weekend. So if you feel like your student organization didn't receive the funding it deserves, you can appeal that decision. And then appeals are following that allocation weekend. And then the Student Senate will read all of the allocations at their Senate meeting. And again, a second reading will be completed as well, too. How much funding now can a student organization receive from Student Government Association? It's important to note that the maximum amount a student org can receive is $15,000 from SGA. Also, please note that this is very, very few of our 550 student organizations who receive this dollar amount. It's because these specific organizations have been receiving Student Government Association funding for a long time, and year after year they've proven that they spend all of their money on the correct areas that they're allowed to, as well as ensuring that they're not receiving any allocation penalties. Also, a first-year organization can apply for a maximum of $500. And if that seems like that's low, it's important to note that as long as you're doing like other organizations and spending all of that allocated fund, the next year you can ask for an increase of 30% more, which would already total your next year's ask at $650. Please also note that if all procedures are followed correctly, the current maximum amount of money an organization stands to lose should they receive a penalty is 20% of what was allocated to your organization last year. The Budget and Finance Committee levies the historic spending of each organization also when deciding the allocation for next year. What that means is the Budget and Finance Committee makes sure to compare their numbers this year to that of last year's fiscal year so that they're not going above that 30% increase, as well as not cutting more than 20% year to year. Now, you've received your funding allocation from Student Government Association. Fantastic and great work. But now what can you spend that money on? What are you allowed per the student handbook and per the SGA funding code? What are you allowed to use that money for? Well, you can use it on any of the following areas: travel expenses, fees for a speaker or any other associated fees, office supplies and postage, printing, event room rentals, organization banners or signs, advertising, equipment rentals, as well as recruiting items such as a t-shirt, pens, mugs, or more. Also internal publications. Of course, too, if you're going to receive funding, there are a few things that you cannot spend your money on. Here are the following items that you cannot utilize Student Government Association funding allocations for. You cannot use these funds for research presentations, your advisor's travel expenses, or internship fees. You cannot use this money for scholarships, awards, gifts, or prizes. You cannot use it for fundraising projects solely beneficial to your organization. You cannot use the funding for operating expenses such as a telephone line, subscription, or salaries. It cannot be utilized to purchase fixtures or furniture to decorate an office or space. It cannot be used on items such as computers, printers, scanners, cameras, or any other kind of equipment or hardware or technology. You cannot use this to purchase items such as tents, tables, canopies, or camping equipment. You also cannot utilize these funds for hotel room service or Texas state sales tax. Continuing on to what other items you cannot use your student organization funding for, club sports or intramural expenses. Funds cannot be utilized for these areas. Neither can they be utilized for national or state organizational membership dues, donations of any kind, publication subscriptions, books, handbooks, or textbooks unless prior approval is received from Student Government Association. Also, it's important to note that food, drink, decorations, entertainment for banquets, receptions, meetings, buffets, parties, or other events cannot have funds allocated from SGA used to pay for them. That's been our brief overview of the Student Government Association funding process. It's important to note that each year, as a part of the funding process, you are still required as a student organization to go to the Student Government Association's funding training as a part of the allocation process. This training here today does not count for that. Should you have any questions, feel free to follow up with Student Government Association at sga@ttu.edu or the phone number listed here.